Do you want to press go?
Yeah.
Wenton King, what are you doing? We've done Led Zeppelin before. I couldn't play the guitar and sing at the same time then either.
I'm not making up any more words. La 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 la. Ma 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 ma. Ba 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 bum ba bum bum bum. That went rather well, I thought.
Yeah, that turned out quite nice. So yeah, we're doing more Led Zeppelin. It doesn't mean we've run out of bands. We've definitely not run out of bands. Don't worry, there is an infinite plethora of music for us to explore.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I mean, people have been requesting lots of random things, and oh god, and well, someone requested Celebration Day actually, but we thought we'd do a little run of 3 Led Zeppelin things. So we'll do 2 bootlegs and we'll do Celebration Day. We thought that'd be nice, because obviously bootlegs are a big thing with Led Zeppelin. They're a big thing with Pink Floyd as well, and a big thing with various other bands as well. But I think Led Zeppelin were very much in the early days of these things being made. It was a big thing. This particular one is significant in that it was one of the first. It was like it was an actual release. It was such a global, huge, industrial scale release. It was like a proper release. It's like a proper Led Zeppelin album. The sound isn't like a proper Led Zeppelin album, but in a way it's just chance, and it's just a great show. And not only is it a great show, but the audience recording, the way the sound is, sort of props up the Led Zeppelin mythology. So the way when Plant really wails, it all just fills the sound, and it sort of says, "The mighty sound of Robert Plant screams through your speakers." And then when you actually hear what he really sounded like at this point, like on BBC sessions, he didn't sound that powerful actually. But obviously at this point they are flying and they're writing their best stuff, and Jimmy Page is on and focused, so that's great. What do you think of the sound?
Sound is wow. I've listened to. I think the sound's been augmented somewhere along the way, because there are versions on the internet which sound a lot worse than others. So someone's obviously done a little bit of tweaking. It's not bad. It's good enough, you know. I mean, this isn't an album in the traditional sense. This is sort of like a snapshot of how Led Zeppelin were at, you know, 70 or something like that?
Yeah, late 1970.
Late 1970.
So it fills a gap.
It's almost like a, you know, little documentary of
where they were.
Of where they were. And as that, it's perfectly listenable.
Yeah. Because before they start previewing Led Zeppelin 4 stuff, they're not thinking about Led Zeppelin 4 yet, and Led Zeppelin 3 is about to come out. He does mention somewhere in there, I think it says the album's coming out in 2 weeks. So it's just at the point that Led Zeppelin 3 is new. It's a new thing.
What's interesting to me is, I mean, obviously they've got Led Zeppelin 2 out. There's a lot of stuff there, considering that there's only 2 albums. So obviously they segue into other things, like there's a bit of Yardbird stuff on there, and you know, some blues stuff, and the repertoire
is already
it was already there, and we're only 2 albums in, which is which is interesting.
Yeah,
you don't realise that because we've listened to the run of albums. You don't kind of realise that as you're going through the albums. You just kind of, okay, that one's good, that one's good, that one's all right. But no, it's I mean, they are well worth watching just with 2 albums.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But obviously we're getting the Led Zeppelin 3 preview material. It is preview material, but there's a fair amount of that. Of course, it was around this time-ish that they played the Bath Festival, famously, which was the big famous thing they did, the second time they played the Bath Festival, and they came on as the sun went down, and I think Peter Grant actually forcibly removed the previous band from the stage, ready for Led Zeppelin to be on at sunset. And so it was a big event, and this is what that sounded like in people's minds, even though it's actually a different show. It's the LA Forum. There aren't very nice recordings of the actual Bath show. I believe Peter Grant actually smashed up people's recording equipment. But in a way, that's what it is. So the Immigrant Song is this new thing, and it's like people aren't expecting that, and it comes, you know. So that's cool. You've also got on here what I think, well, is my favourite version of Whole Lot of Love. I think it's wonderful, with all the different songs played in there. You know, you listen to How the West Has Won, and by then it had become much less intense, much, you know, the sort of, you don't quite hear the joy of them playing it anymore here when they're just blasting through all these classic songs that, you know, that are just fun to play.
That's a point of interest. I mean, where does this stand in bootleg history? Because this is like the second Led Zeppelin bootleg.
Yeah, it's a
Obviously
biggie. It's a big one. It's a big famous one. There's two hugely famous bootleg shows that people talk about. The other is we'll do next week. You can probably guess what it is. But they're both audience recordings. I mean, subsequently, I think in the 90s, a whole load of soundboards came out. A whole load, and some of them are from 1980, and they're a bit unpleasant. But there's a lot from 75, which are just fantastic. You know, so and 73 as well, although they're very similar to Song Remains the Same. There's an argument that the earlier shows are a bit better than Song Remains and whatever. Plus we've got How the West Was Won from 72, which is kind of the definitive live statement. And then we've got the BBC sessions from 71. We've got the Royal Albert Hall from 1970. So it's all been done now and officially released, a lot of it. And so this becomes less important. But you have to remember, for 20 years, the only live Led Zeppelin people knew, if you didn't have bootlegs, was the Song Remains the Same. There was nothing else. Not even the BBC sessions have been released. Although John Peel did play, I heard him play them in the 90s. But it fills a gap still, because Albert Hall, it's still very much the blues material. It's I Can't Quit You and stuff like that. And then BBC sessions, they're previewing Led Zeppelin 4 material, so it's onto another stage there. And by that time they're much bigger, and they're also very nervous on that show. Whereas this show, they're just blaring it out. But at the same time, it's also the introduction of the acoustic set, which might have been a surprise actually to a lot of people there.
So potentially, this could have created an industry.
It was a terrible, bad industry, and you shouldn't. And this was stupid for me to buy this, because it was a waste of money. I could have got it for free. You can get them all for free. Get them for free.
Yeah, but the thing is that it sort of adds to the mythology of Led Zeppelin. This kind of thing. It
does. It really does. Yeah. I remember listen to this, Eddie. No, I think it was for badge holders only, in handmade jewel case on some price list from somewhere. I don't know what it was. 80 quid. That's just obscene.
2 of those.
Yeah.
Let's review some tracks, because there's quite a few of them.
They open with the Immigrant Song. Immigrant Song live. Everyone's heard it now. There's 2 versions. I think there's actually 3 versions out there. So yeah, it's got a guitar solo added to it. This is a good one. I'd say of those ones, the weakest one would be the 71. I think they were a bit nervous, so the Pants Wail at the start isn't quite as good. You can hear that they have no qualms.
Mm-hmm. I find it quite surprising that they open with this, because it must, you know, it's not giving Robert Plant any chance to warm up his voice, and he goes straight into it.
Which kind of helped, which may have caused problems. Actually, and of course they did it for a good 2 years. That may have been a source of discomfort later on.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, obviously, he opened with rock and roll, but obviously it was a very toned down rock and roll to warm up his voice.
Yeah. Number 2,
Heartbreaker. Yeah, and once again, obviously, again, you know, it's Heartbreaker, isn't it? We know Heartbreaker. We know what live Heartbreaker sounds like, because, again, for years and years and years, the only bit we'd heard was on the Song Remains the Same movie, and it was just a little snippet of it. And it's slightly different live. They come in at a different point, actually, where they change the key, and obviously the middle section is longer, faffing around stuff. And we get to hear him playing Beret, which is very nice.
Yeah, track 3, Bong, bong, bong.
Dazed and Confused, a very special song. It's a very special song. This is before they started adding bits to it in a way. It was still just the jam. So it was still essentially the same pieces on the album, but just longer and more intense and with a bit more light and shade. So they hadn't added bits. So it's before they did the put in Walter's Walk in there, and before the Achilles' Last Stand bit and all that stuff. But yeah, good version.
Yeah,
Again,
17 minutes. What is it on Song Remains the Same? Is it like 30 minutes or something, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think 75 went up to about 45 minutes. Although the 75 version really is just a sort of stretched out version of the 73 version. So it is the same as the Song Remains the Same version, they just took longer. They just had gaps and.
Again, the position in the set surprises me. You would expect this to be sort of like, and then it's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a few minutes in, and we're all into this epic sort of mystical kind of.
And at this point, surely this is their. Some people are there for a whole lot of love, but really that's the special song, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose it's a warm up, isn't it? They get to really have a jam
And mess around, yeah. Track 4, Bring It On Home.
bring it on home. Now, of course, when I got this years ago, this was novelty because it's Bring It On Home live and it's an extended bit, and they have the and all that, which I thought was what they called Bring It All Back. But actually, Bring It All Back is Bring It On Home, the Led Zeppelin song, to separate it from Bring It On Home, the original, which they play the whole of, obviously. So again, it's on How the West Won, so the sound varies a bit. The sound quality does vary a bit, and bootleg standards, this is an A. By real standards, it's better than Retched, but worse than Awful. I think it's about right. Yeah.
Track 5.
Track 5.
That's the way.
That's the way. Can't say how much of a wonderful piece of music. There's 2 pieces of music on Led Zeppelin 3 which are just utterly timeless and kind of flatten everything else up before. Apart from maybe Dazed and Confused, those 2 songs are far and away better than anything on the first 2 albums for me. And bringing in that folk influence, they're so good at it, and nobody expected it. And obviously it was like, well, what are they doing? There's all this acoustic stuff on there.
They got a little bit of grief over the acoustic stuff, didn't they?
Yeah. Of course, they've always the story always goes, well, people want their Whole Lot of Love Part 2, but I mean, Immigrant Song is kind of Whole Lot of Love Part 2 actually, so it's not that different. But it's the second side was the acoustic stuff, but it's now, of course, it's the one that stands the test of multiple re-listens and etc. I wonder if you had Plant with his sort of West Coast hippie stuff he liked. You got Page who likes his heavy rock, and maybe. I don't know. Maybe this Plant would have reservations about sounding like Deep Purple, and Page would have reservations of sounding like the Mamas and the Papas. So maybe here they've gone off in a more cultured direction, which they both appreciate. It's something where they share more, maybe.
Yeah, and this is sort of, again, it brings John Paul Jones to home. Just how important John Paul Jones is to the band, because he jumps on the mandolin and he's a general instrumentalist, isn't he? He's really sort of really skillful at a lot of instruments, and it's sort of so important to what they produced in the end.
Yeah,
which probably goes not to the, obviously most fans realise that, but to the people who listen to Led Zeppelin on the radio, they wouldn't understand that it's just Robert Plant and Jimmy Page.
Yeah,
and some guy on the drums bashing them really hard. Yeah, so it's nice. It is a very good performance.
Yeah, with a great song.
Yeah,
I tried actually comparing these 2 versions with, this version with the one on How the West Was Won. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's better than the other 2 commercially available versions. I think they're all very similar though, in truth. I think this is a better performance though. There's nothing that pushes Plant's voice or anything like that.
Yeah. Track 6 is an interesting one.
Yeah, it's Bron Yr Aur. Bron Yr Aur. The not Stomp, which is what they did used to subsequently play on the acoustic sets actually. But didn't appear till Physical Graffiti, so if this came out before Physical Graffiti, that was actually them releasing an unreleased song.
Yeah. Oh, it's 5 years, isn't it? Until Physical Graffiti.
Yeah.
That ends the acoustic part of the set.
It does.
Yeah, because then we get on to track 7,
Since
I've
I've
Been Loving You.
The intro is brilliant, because remember the album hasn't been released, and Plant goes, this song's called Since I've Been Loving You, and someone in the audience goes, can't quite hear what they're saying, but it's like, oh god, come on. In other words, they're sick of the acoustic slow stuff, they want rock. Plant goes, put a sock in it, mate. So that was great. But yeah, great. I mean, this is them performing it before it's been released, so that's really interesting. And it's Plant is still finding himself, but Page is on it. He's just focused and he's figured out how that song will be played, and he does it. So it's a really good version.
Yeah, I mean it's probably my favourite Led Zeppelin song. I think it's good. I don't think it's a great performance, obviously because it's an early version of it. So obviously they've got to play it a lot. I would imagine there are probably better performances than that out there, but it's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it could be better.
I mean, they did develop it over time, and I think playing it slower gave it more weight, actually. So if you can get a good 77 performance, if you can find one, that's wonderful. And also 73, which has got the sort of widdly, bombastic version, that's got really well.
Mm-hmm. Track 8.
No. Organ solo and Thank You.
Yeah.
Now here, the organ solo is quite short, and it's interesting how it's John Paul Jones sounding like his contemporaries a bit. He's doing stuff. It's only 2 minutes, but it's nice. It's interesting actually. Some of the other shows around this time weren't like that at all. He did these extended, almost ambient washes of church organ-y stuff going on. So it's a shame he didn't do that there. And I don't know if maybe that this is a real. They've got a very rowdy audience, and so they're playing in a different way. It's a good version of Thank You.
Yeah, not bad. Track 9. What is and what should never be.
Yeah, I don't understand. It's one of those things. It's a song that's never appealed to me for whatever reason. I've never figured out why that is, and obviously I know it so well for so many years of having heard it.
It's a pretty good performance of it, though.
It is a good performance of it, yeah. But they played it a lot until '73, and generally it always sounded much the same. It kind of slowly deteriorated, I think. So this is probably better than later, maybe.
Yeah. Track 10. Disc 2.
Or Disc 2, yeah. Whole Lot of Love. This is my favourite Whole Lot of Love. I think this is absolutely fantastic. Boogie Mower's in there already, so it didn't take very long to introduce that. But we've also got I'm Moving On, I've Got a Girl, Some Other Guy, Think It Over, Honey Bee, and it's listed here as Lemon Song, but it's actually not. It's just Plant going Lemon and some blues. Brilliant, just fantastic. They're not tired. Plant's voice isn't breaking. Page isn't on drugs. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's sort of like halfway through the show we're going to pick things up again, and all the doubters in the crowd, there you go, have a bit of Whole Lot of Love.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Track 2.
Communication Breakdown.
Yeah, Communication Breakdown. So they played Communication Breakdown, but then as they did, I mean, it's on the BBC sessions as well, where they on the last verse they jammed and changed the rhythm a bit and changed it around. Probably because it was boring just to play Communication Breakdown. But the jam carries on and on and on, and there's kind of a bass solo, which becomes Good Times Bad Times. I'm not sure if that was spontaneous. It does sound spontaneous if it wasn't planned, because when they were doing the publicity for Celebration Day, John Paul Jones said, "Yep, we never played that before," and I said, "Yes, you did. There it is." So I wonder if it was spontaneous. I don't know. And also, for what it's worth, but like a soft, quiet version of I Saw Her Standing There, the Plant improvising the lyrics, and the crowd goes mental when he starts singing it, which is really interesting.
I mean, I like this because I'm not a big fan of Communication Breakdown, and it just show that live, actually, with all the other stuff, is actually a pretty good thing. Like,
yeah.
So it's interesting how songs on an album which seem pretty run of the mill, in a live context, can actually become something quite good. Yeah.
Next track.
Out on the Tiles.
Out on the Tiles. Now, again, this is another reason why this is just one of those definitive bootlegs. Very rarely played. Very rarely played, and this is before the album's come out, so they haven't quite figured out which songs they're going to play in the album, And they play it, and there it is.
Track 4.
Blueberry Hill. Wonderful, and it follows the same formula. They've got a formula for playing these classic songs, the same way they play Some Other Guy and things like that. And basically, they Zeppelin it up basically by just really playing it and having a cool bendy solo. And Blueberry Hill particularly works really well. I don't think they played it again, ever. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. I don't understand why they would not play it forever.
Again, I wonder if there's a certain amount of spontaneity in it, or whether they just said on just before, let's do Blueberry Hill, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think they probably had a chat. What should we do now? What's Blueberry Hill? What key is it in? how do we start it? You know, I don't think they could have just done it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked. But yeah,
It's interesting listening to this. You do get a sense of, because Led Zeppelin were obviously driven by their live performance and touring, really developing that support and fans from the ground up. Not the way things are done these days, which is you go on X Factor and then Simon Cowell says you're famous, so therefore you're famous.
yeah. And you get your 5 minutes, and then they throw you in the bin.
And that you can see why they attracted such interest. 'Cause it must have been a great show to go to.
Yeah, yeah. You go there. Oh yeah, I like Led Zeppelin. I've got Led Zeppelin 2. That's a good album. Everyone's got Led Zeppelin 2, and you go and see them, and it's awesome. And then there's some acoustic stuff, and you're like, what? But then a whole lot of love and everything. And by the end, you'd be bludgeoned into catatonia. And all.
Yeah. You go and buy the album in 2 weeks, wouldn't you?
But not this, because you don't buy this. Don't buy bootlegs.
No. Right then, are we going to get eggs? Do we give bootlegs eggs? I can't remember.
That's difficult, isn't it? Difficult. On the bootleg scale, it's 6 eggs, isn't it? But because it's one of the definitive bootlegs. But it's 5 eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big bootleg fan, and yet I can listen to this. So I'm going to go 5 eggs as well.
You've probably already guessed what we're doing next week. See you next week for Listen to This, Eddie.